In August 2008, I almost died. After weeks of intense neck, back, and migraine pain, I collapsed unconscious on my bathroom floor. Luckily, my husband was home at the time and immediately called 911, and paramedics came and whisked me off to Harborview, the regional trauma center, part of UW Medicine system in Seattle. There, doctors discovered a ruptured brain aneurysm bleeding into my right frontal lobe. They rushed me into surgery, where skilled nurses and doctors, we now affectionately call brain ninjas, saved my life. I was in the hospital a total of 6 weeks between neuro ICU and inpatient rehab. I don't remember much of the month of August that year due to short-term memory loss, heavy drugs, and other cognitive trauma. Now, you also need to know that I was temporarily blind during this time. So there I was, hair half shaved off, lying unsure in a hospital bed, staring into my own blurriness, listening to the TV. Would it be weird to say that I had an amazing experience during that time? The care we received was extraordinary. All medical procedures were explained before any poking and prodding began. Everyone from the surgeons to the meal delivery staff used my first name. There were no set visiting hours. My husband could stay there as long as I needed him. And at a particularly vulnerable time, it was a big deal to choose my own food, which meant a lot of chocolate cream pie. My dog could come visit me in the outdoor garden. And no matter who we asked for help, no one ever said, "That's not my job." Extraordinary. Was it just luck or chance that I had the most kind and caring people on my care team? After my amazing recovery, I wanted to give back, so I became a patient advisor for the hospital. That meant I was the voice of the patient on, in this case, an education committee. This allowed me to get a peek under the hood. None of this was chance or luck. It was intentionally designed to be an empathetic patient experience. See, UW Medicine, like many hospitals around the world, follows a methodology, a philosophy known as patient and family-centered care. They use this methodology to determine policies, practices, communications, training that put the patient and their family at the center of the care experience. They see things from the patient's point of view, like with their patient advisors, and adopt policies that make the experience what it is. Empathy by design. But why? Well, it turns out that patient and family-centered care saves hospitals money. It reduces costly errors. It reduces readmission rates. It boosts patient satisfaction scores and word of mouth. It even improves health outcomes. All very bottom line motives to invest. Lower costs, higher profits. And that's totally okay. As a patient, I didn't care about why. I just cared about the great experience I had that led to my recovery. This environment enabled my caregivers' natural empathy to flourish. So it was the ultimate win-win-win for organization, staff, and customer. Is empathy adopted for selfish motives any less valid? We all lament what Barack Obama has called the empathy deficit we see in our world, in our community, in our workplaces. But broad platitudes to be nicer are not actionable enough for people to put into practice during tough situations. If we really want to close the empathy gap, we have to meet people where they are. We have to get creative. And often, we as humans need selfish motives to adopt new behaviors. Empathy, to me as a marketer, has always been important to success. Understanding things from your customer's point of view so you can provide the right products, services, communications. But several years back, I was left shocked and scared by questionable leadership practices all around us. Our most visible and successful leaders involved in scandals ranging from DC to Silicon Valley Wall Street to Hollywood. All of this while at the time I was reading books to my 2.5-year-old son, like Words Are Not for Hurting, and trying to teach him values of compassion and collaboration and understanding his impact on other people. And honestly, I lost heart. I teared up reading those books to my son. I thought, why bother if he's just going to grow up in a world where the leaders that he sees as successful don't exemplify any of these values? So my solution was to research exactly how we could put empathy into action regardless of our profession and who was doing it. And I was delighted to find so many examples, so much data and research that proved that empathy is not just good for society, it's great for business. And as a business strategist, a light went off. I thought, what if we could convince leaders to adopt empathy because of them being able to find success for themselves or their brands or their cultures? What if we could show them what's in it for them? First, let me explain what I mean by empathy in a business context. Empathy is not about being nice. It's not about crying on the floor with your employees. It's not about caving into crazy demands. It's not even about agreeing with people. Empathy is about seeing things from another person's perspective so that you can connect with them. It's about a method of perspective taking, of information gathering, and using that to take action, to make a decision, to communicate in a certain way. It can often lead to compassionate acts, especially during a tough decision. And sometimes it can involve feeling what someone else is feeling. But for those of you wondering, but exactly how does it benefit a business? Here's what I learned. Empathetic leaders enjoy more loyalty and engagement. If you see, hear, and value your people, they're going to do their best work for you. And that's going to translate to the customer experience. One study showed that engaged workforces will yield 10% more customer ratings, higher customer ratings, and will increase sales by 20%. Empathetic cultures create more innovative products and services. They attract top talent. They retain top talent. They reduce turnover. One survey showed that 80% of people would be more likely to leave their employer for a more empathetic organization, but more than 90% would be more likely to stay with an empathetic employer. Empathetic brands enjoy more positive word of mouth. They enjoy more customer loyalty and profitability and revenue. One survey of CEOs showed that they link empathetic culture with financial performance. And you can look at a company like Ryanair Airlines, a discount airline in Europe. Several years ago, they implemented many empathetic customer service policies to take the hassle out of travel, things like allocated seating or baggage fees. The following year, they saw an increase in their net profit of 43%. Empathy is not just good for society, it's great for business. And if we can help leaders adopt an empathetic mindset, even if it's to advance their own agenda, the recipients still benefit. I have personally witnessed how doing things for good optics can transform people from the outside in. Hear me out. Once upon a time, I was a marketing manager, and it was my job to put on events and campaigns to help our clients pretty up their not so pretty reputations. And one of the promotions I always used to push on them was a food bank drive, because it was my way of getting them to use their money for the good of the community. A semi-truck load of food would rock up to a food bank. Press would take photos, execs would shake hands, staff would unpack boxes, and the client would look like a hero. But something amazing happened. Those executives, the staff, they were now in a situation they never would have been in, interacting with people at a different socioeconomic level. They got to know them as people. They heard their stories. They hugged. Many of them stayed involved with the organization long after the event. Selfish motives got them into the room to connect, to be forever changed. And by the way, the food bank got stocked and hungry people got to eat. This is the cornerstone of effective marketing. What's in it for me? We can use this human trait to persuade people. If you've ever wrapped vegetables in bacon for your little one to eat, you know what I'm talking about. And we see examples of this beyond for-profits. We see nonprofits using this as a way to get people to do good. It's not just about their cause or the people they help, but how will you make a difference? How can we acknowledge your generosity with a brick in the walkway or a building named after you? Now, I realize this might not sit right with some of you, and I totally get it. But do the recipients care how a leader gets to adopting an empathetic mindset, like me in that hospital? Once you try it on, once you adopt an empathetic mindset, you're there. You're being empathetic. I talked to one psychologist who used to work with autistic children, and to help them cultivate their empathy, they would give them rote lists of things to do in an interaction. Make eye contact, follow specific scripts. The kids didn't want to do it. They were being told to do it. But what happened was they liked the response they were getting, and they wanted to do more. And pretty soon, it did become just part of how they operated with people. It took that external nudge to get them to make that internal change. Modern market trends, as well as the pandemic, have shown us that brands and leaders acting with empathy are winning right now. Those that have been there for their employees, for their customers, for their communities. The market's paid attention and rewarded them. Just look at all the media attention lavished on Zoom for free K-12 access, or Salesforce for extending paid family leave, or Starbucks for increasing employee mental health benefits. And by the way, further to that, the incoming talent generations, Gen Z, millennials, they're demanding a new kind of workplace culture and a new kind of leadership style. One survey showed that 71% of them want their workplace to feel like a second family. Top talent will no longer tolerate organizations that don't see, hear, and value diverse viewpoints. They're demanding respect, balance, empathy, and companies ignore this shift at their own financial peril. As we face a world filled with challenges right now, we've got to get creative. So let's show leaders how adopting empathy can yield success. When our most visible leaders are acting with empathy, that has an exponential impact on all of us. And talk about the ripple effect. You can be that model of success in your own sphere of influence. When you act with empathy through active listening, through genuine curiosity, through practicing presence, you're going to reap all the benefits that the research shows. Collaboration, innovation, trust. You're going to get more done. And people are going to look at you as a model and say, I like the way he operates. I want to find success that way. You show them that you can be compassionate and competitive, ambitious and kind. Representation matters. Here's hope for the future. There are efforts afoot all over the world to cultivate empathy in young children, so they don't need that external motivation. So it just becomes part of who they are. Let me tell you about a little girl named Yalda Modaber. Yalda was born in the US, but her family moved back to Iran and then back to the US in the late 70s, right before the Iranian hostage crisis. Yalda did not have many friends. She didn't fit in. But then one day, a group of girls came to her door and asked her if she wanted to play. Delighted, she followed them, and they led her to a mob of waiting kids on bicycles. The kids taunted her by singing Bomb Iran to the tune of Barbara Ann. They pelted her with plaster of Paris balls. Yalda was physically and psychologically bullied for 2 more years. You know what happened to that little girl? She grew up, became a scientist, studied the brain, and opened a school, Golistan Education in Northern California. A school where empathy and compassion are ingrained into the curriculum and experience, not just some 30-minute class. Kindness is at the root of every kid's experience, and Yalda wanted to create an environment where kids were so cradled and supported that they would never want to lash out and treat others so inhumanely. She wants empathy to be so embedded in their identities as leaders that acting in any other way would be a misalignment to their sense of self. Imagine if empathy was just how we wanted to operate. Imagine if that was the norm. Imagine if leaders grew up like the kids at Yalda's school. It's possible. But for us adults right now, we need to reprogram ourselves. And human nature suggests that external motives, selfish motives, are a great way to ignite internal change. So let's show leaders what's in it for them. Let's show them that they can be successful without parking their humanity at the door every day. A world where leaders who put people first profit, grow, and thrive as a result. That world is possible, but we have to meet people where they are. So I invite you to help me Trojan horse the world into being more empathetic.